So we have a lot to celebrate today. 20 years of service and a $35 million economic impact. I like to say we're 20 years old, we've just begun. We're also celebrating having Mr. Dimon with us today. Jamie and John Barrett are going to have a conversation. Conversation with John is pretty interesting as well. A fireside chat, if you will. Let me take a moment to introduce John. President and CEO of Western Southern. Through his leadership, starting '89, when Western Southern was a small Midwest insurance company. Today, it's a $65 billion financial engine. And he has provided that growth to Cincinnati and become a pillar, not only business-wise, but in the city itself. So, John, thank you very much. Let me take a moment then to talk about Jamie Dimon. You can read about Jamie in the program, but here's some facts that aren't included. Jamie joined Bank One as chairman and CEO in 2000, engineered a dramatic turnaround. 2000 was not an easy year, taking the bank from a $500 million loss in 2000 to record earnings of $3.5 billion in 2003, before its merger with JPMorgan Chase. Dimon led the acquisition of Bear Stearns in March of '08 at the request of the federal government, and Washington Mutual, September of '08, following the largest bank failure in U.S. history during the height of the U.S. financial crisis. What these bios don't tell you about John and Jamie, and that they're friends, and they met about 15 years ago. So we're here for a great conversation between two friends about the status of the economy, how to tackle poverty, and I'm sure they will cover a few other current events as well. Without further ado, please let me welcome John and Jamie.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I might just move this out of the way. Well, here we are. What you guys may not know is that while Jamie runs the biggest and most important financial institution in the world, he's still selling. Earlier this year, on 2 different occasions, he sent me emails about a piece of business that we had out for bid, and they did win it, but an awful lot of guys were looking at this piece of business. He's the only CEO who contacted me twice to say, we want your business.
I came here to say thank you.
But what I really would like to start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about JPMorgan Chase and its history?
Yeah, so first of all, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Congratulations, Cincinnati Works. I mean, these efforts people make to improve people's lives are extraordinary. And when you travel around the world, America is the best at it, and we need to do quite a bit more to get to where we want to be. And so JPMorgan Chase, the beginning of JPMorgan Chase is Chase Manhattan Bank. The Chase Bank was Salmon Chase, who was born here. He was actually he was the Secretary of Treasury to Abe Lincoln. And the company today is literally 5,000 companies. So I think the bank here was called Winters Bank or something like that. And so Bank One, First Chicago, National Bank of Detroit, Chase Manhattan, Chemical, WAMU acquired 20 companies, Bear Stearns acquired companies, Morgan, Guarantee, and I go on and on. I actually have a family tree, and it's kind of by that history isn't that different than other companies in America as they merge and grow and expand and stuff like that. So it is what it is today. It took a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of pain and suffering, and a lot of management and sometimes the shareholders, and we are here.
It's amazing. Now, Salmon P. Chase, you guys know the Salmon P. Chase School of Law. Right here was that guy was the namesake for his bank, which is, I think, incredible. Yeah. But you also have a lot of employees in Ohio, don't you?
We do. You know, well, Ohio, I think I'm going to say 25,000 employees. You know, Columbus is one of the main hubs. It was one of the main hubs of Bank One. You know, we love the Midwest. Bank One, First Chicago, we're a complete Midwestern bank. So, and obviously in Cincinnati, all of Columbus, we bank like 2 million consumers and a couple 100,000 small businesses, and obviously a lot of the large companies and the governments. And we do a lot of work for cities, schools, states, hospitals, bridges, tunnels, authorities, et cetera. So we're proud to be here. We've been here a long time. One of the things that I think is very important for J.P. Morgan, we are not fair weather friends. We're there in good times and bad times. We don't run in and out. You know, when I travel the world, you know, our exposures in Italy went up in the crisis. Our exposures in Greece went up in their crisis. Our exposures during the crisis, we bought WAMU and Bear Stearns. Combined, those were bigger than TARP. Okay, and so we were there, trying to be there. We know that sometimes it means your profits go down, but that's not important. You know, if we're your bank, you have to rely on us, and we know that. So, you know, at one point, it's not about just profitability, it's about being there when you really need us the most.
Jamie, there's an awful lot going on the regulatory side of your business right now, and the Department of Labor's new changes affect you, but they also affect everybody else in this room. And I know the bigger you are, the more sort of into it you are, but every small business is going to be affected by many of the changes. And you wrote an op-ed in New York Times maybe a month or so ago. Do you want to talk a little bit about income inequality and minimum wage, all that type of thing?
So, you know, I think it's very important when you talk about America, okay, we have this long set of issues, and there's maybe 6 major ones. There's immigration, and you're welcome if you're an immigrant to this country or Muslim or whatever. I think we should be a land of accepting people. There's the corporate tax reform, individual tax reform, infrastructure. We need more, you know, but it's got to be done right. It just can't be, you know, gifts to the Democrat, you know, friends of the Democrats. And but wage inequality is one of them. I'll go back to that in a second. But when we talk about our problems, I think it's very important for Americans to just take a deep breath and look at our strengths. So when I went to business school, we spoke about Japan. They were taking over the world. They worked harder. They're better at math, science, and engineering. They're more social. The government collaborated with business, and we don't hear very much or very well. And then, of course, you heard about the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then Mexico, Indonesia, South Africa, Turkey. No one, and I say this respectfully for other countries. I go to all these other countries, I say it, they all know. No one has what we have. We're blessed with all the food, water, and energy we want. We have peaceful and wonderful neighbors in Canada and Mexico. Okay, so compare both those things to China. They don't have the food, water, and energy. Their neighbors are Philippines, North Korea, Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam, Russia, Pakistan, Afghanistan. It's tough. They got a tough part of the world there, okay? We have the best universities on the planet, the best business on the planet, a rule of law, unbelievable work ethic. You don't really spend a lot of time worrying about corruption in the United States of America. We have the widest and deepest markets you'll ever see, and which is a good thing, despite what regulators say. And I'm talking about venture capital, private equity, individual businesses, the innovation of Cincinnati Works. You know, you got a lot of countries, they don't even have something like that. You know, so we have this unbelievable hand. It's the best hand ever dealt of any country on the planet, and yes, we have problems. So both are true, and so we shouldn't deny the strengths. And so income inequality is, you know, first of all, it goes like this. When there's a recession, it gets worse. At the beginning of recovery, it continues to get worse because who's getting all the money? The people with assets, you know, homes and stocks and bonds and dividends go up and things like that. It's reversing as we speak, by the way, which is a good thing. You know, one of the things that people say is, what do you do about it? I listen to Bernie Sanders and all these people. I say, okay, what do you do? What do you do? So here's what you do. First of all, these skills initiatives to get kids back at work. So you can do it through community schools, you can do it through high schools, you can do it through people like Cincinnati Works, and we do this around the world. So we analyze what people do around the world to try to share best practices, someone said somewhere. You know, I think we should have there's one is skills. That phlebotomist, that's a skill. Okay, she has to learn how to do that consistently, hopefully painlessly, you know, with a smile on her face, but they're also unskilled. You know, there's a very important distinction too, is that the difference between skilled and unskilled labor is growing. But Quinn, your company, right? God bless you for what you're doing. You know, I read it in America that people talk about dead-end jobs. That's not a dead-end job. You gave someone a job and a life, and that's the first rung on the ladder. He may open a franchise for you one day. So I get very upset when people act like, literally, you go to New York City, which is very wealthy, and a lot of the very liberal New Yorkers will say, you know, those are dead-end jobs. No, they're not. That's how people got there. They're the first rung on the ladder. When my wife was at a meeting where some wealthy white woman who probably hadn't worked recently, we were talking about programs for tellers who were going to raise their comp to, anywhere to $14 to $15 an hour. And she said, oh, that's just a dead-end job. No, it's not. A lot of our branch managers start as tellers. It's the first rung in the ladder. And we give $11,000 of benefits. So $33,000 salary, it's usually, can go up right immediately from there. $11,000 of benefits, including medical, dental, health, retirement, 401k. Well, hell, we give you a psychiatrist if you're not doing well and you don't feel good. We try to help the people and stuff like that. So, and the thing that I think Democrats and Republicans should focus on is growth. The most important thing for jobs is competition, is growth, and yet a lot of things we do kill growth, and they act like it doesn't matter. So you and I we can all talk about regulations endlessly, but regulations, government shutdowns, inefficient tax systems, those things hurt growth. And so we should be very rational about it. We had growth. I want to come back in 2 years where we're growing a lot, and a lot of the business people in this room are going to be complaining about wage inflation, right? That's what will happen one day. If we have good growth, that's what you're going to do. You have to start paying more money, even for unskilled. So I think the earned income tax credit, which people probably haven't studied very much, but we pay women with children, we pay them up to $6,000 a year if their income is below a certain amount. Okay, I think we should greatly expand that program to single men. So think of it as a negative income tax. I think it'll get money to the hands of people who need it. It'll give them a more affordable life. I guarantee you most will be spent. It'll cause a money multiplier. But we also, that kid, I forgot his name, Terry. That kid, I don't get mad anymore. I have an apartment. I'm proud of my life. That's it right there. And so you get kids at work, it gives them respect and self-respect. And so there are a lot of things to do, and yet what do? We scapegoat, finger point, yell, and scream, pretty much. Nor do we look at, and the other thing that's always in the back of my mind is that all these philanthropies are often making up for failed government policies. And you think we go back and look at some of these failed government policies, but they're like institutions. You can't change them. They're impossible to change. But what, one of our huge problems, inner city school education, 50% of the kids don't graduate. 50%. And even the kids who do graduate aren't ready for a job. And that's a sin. That's a sin. That is so bad. And and among those people could be Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein. We'll never know. We'll never know because they'll never have a chance to shine like that. And yet, do you hear people ringing the alarm bell? Do you hear anyone saying this doesn't work? I think the teachers should say it. I think the teacher unions should say it. I think the businesses should say it. I think the government officials should say it. It's a disaster, and it's fixable because a lot of examples of how it got fixed. So there are things to do. Yelling and screaming is just not going to make the difference. Collaboration, the mayor, I know you collaborate here. It's all about that, working together to get things fixed.
You mentioned briefly about tax reform. We're all interested in tax reform, but you and the larger international companies have an awful lot of blocked funds outside. How would you change the taxes to bring it back, and what do you think it could be done to our economy if we do it?
The corporate tax rate is 35%. The actual paid is 25%. In the rest of the world, the stated rate is 25%. The actual paid is about 15%. Okay? The problem, and the people, again, my Democratic friends make this a moral issue. It's not a moral issue. People move money and do stuff to make money for shareholders and leave money. So if you earn money overseas and you pay 15 and you want to bring it back, you got to pay another 20. So American corporations have earned $3 trillion and left it overseas. The problem with that is they're building plants overseas. They're buying companies overseas. They're putting resources overseas. So if the government comes along and stops Pfizer from buying Allergan like they hit a home run, but the fact is foreign companies can buy American companies cheaper. American companies can't compete with foreign companies, and both have incentives to put plants overseas. It's not, and by their studies, and this is a hard one to convince people of, that if you reduce corporate taxes, wages go up. Okay, there are a lot of them that show it. It seems in common sense. So the fact is we have to reform that. I think what business should do, by the way, is we should go to 20 to 25%. But I think business needs to go to Washington and offer stuff that helps the other people too. It doesn't work when you go to Washington and you pound, this is what's good for my company. Because that's just very self-serving for you and your shows. So that's why I think we should talk about earned income tax credits. You all heard about carried interest? Anyone here get carried interest? You don't deserve it. Okay, and remember, I run a Wall Street bank. We bank all those hedge funds and private equity. It's outrageous. Why should they be paying 15% effectively what is their earnings, and we have to pay 40% or 45%? So anyway, so we should get rid of all those things that look like you're just taking care of, not just the 1%, but the 0.01%. And so there's a lot of things to do to fix this. Another thing, if you can afford it, we announced that, so we pay our tellers now nationally starting around 12. We're going to kind of raise to 15. Think of 15 LA, San Francisco, maybe a little bit less in other parts of the country. That's it's $31,000 a year, if you can afford it. So I'm deeply respectful of the fact that not all people can afford it. Not all companies can afford, medical for their people. But I think if you can, it's a good thing. Now's the point to just share a little bit more. And if your profits go up, 3%, not 5%, so be it. Now is a good time to do it. So companies can do a lot. The companies who can't, should let us know. And that's why I like the earned income tax credit. So in your business, if we have this negative income tax, it'll actually help small businesses. I think that's a very good thing too. And help employment.
Jamie, right now, the press and the politicians are all over Wall Street. How do you change that? It's been 7, 8 years now since the crisis. How do you get that off of that and back on growth?
Yeah, it's not just Wall Street. It's business. I mean, business is anathema. I mean, somehow, like I've said, so I'm speaking for all businesses now. We are philanthropic. We give away $250 million a year. We give our people medical. We give our people 401k match and a pension. We spend $1 billion a year in training. We help institutions like Cincinnati Works in 1,000 hamlets around the world. And I'm speaking for, we do a lot of great stuff. We, if we have bad people, we fire them. We share the wealth. So, most of our people average, salaries, a total comp of 60 or 70,000, but a certain amount make a lot. And I tell people we need those too. We don't have the people who help and drive the growth of the company. It's not good for my shareholder or for the company. But I thought that's what they wanted us to do. You big corporations spread the wealth around, and we do. And I speak for all of you. Business, 145 million people work in America. 125 million work for business. 20 million work for government. The 20 million who work for government are police, firemen, military, et cetera. The citizens we hold in the highest regard. But we couldn't afford that if you didn't have the other 125. And I think there's just a huge disconnect about how you get there. And it's not small business. Washington loves to extol small business. I love small business. But half of the capital expenditures in America's drive productivity are the biggest 1,700 companies. J.P. Morgan's competitiveness around the world helps all American citizens. And I can go through all the economics of that. So, somehow we've gone off base where, government and, politics, and both Republicans, the businesses lost both the Republicans and the Democrats at this point. And that they don't like business, and business doesn't like them, and so instead of having collaboration, rolling up your sleeves, getting it done, looking at the issues and the problems, we don't, and it's unpleasant, it's not fair, it's inaccurate, and it leads to wrong decisions. But that's the state we're in right now, and we'll see if it changes. Someone will change it one day. Someone will change it.
Well, we're on the verge of an election. Let's just for a minute say you might have been president. What would you do?
I was quoted someone saying I'd love to be president, but I'm not going to run. I mean, it's hard. I mean, politics is tough. It's three-dimensional. It's just difficult. I don't think CEOs automatically good as politicians. But I would, seeing what's going on now, I would love to have been president. But I would have had to start 20 years ago. Most of these people have been running their whole lives. Okay, Trump is an exception. He's one of the only people who's ever run for president who didn't actually be senator, governor, mayor, attorney general, and for many years. Barack Obama was running since the day he left college. And I think you almost need to be part of that party, and so he is unique that way. And it makes him the outsider, which is why the throughout the bastards things kind of works a little bit with him. But I think the things are obvious, and I really mean this, completely obvious and basic, and they don't have a damn thing to do with Democrats, Republicans, and and I urge everyone, just drop the mantle. We all have these knee-jerk reactions now, and we need, we need infrastructure. We need infrastructure. Our ports, our schools, our airports. New York City hasn't built a tunnel or a bridge for 50 years, and we need them. But so the Democrats say we need infrastructure, and they mean jobs. And they also, what they basically mean, they'll give it to their friends, their favorite governors, their favorite mayors, their favorite unions, their favorite stuff like that. So the Republicans are also right when they say, we're not going to build bridges to nowhere. We're not going to tax the American public just to have that great sucking sound in Washington, give it out to their cronies. I agree with that too. So, if I was Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, I'd go to the other side and say, how can we make it work for you? How can we make this where it's not bridges to nowhere? There's this great funny quote, Milton Friedman, great economist, was in Asia somewhere this 30, 40 years ago, and they're building a road. And they've got all these people, thousands of people with shovels digging, and there are big excavating machines over there. He says, why not using the machines? Why are you using shovels? And they say, Mr. Friedman, that's a great question. Jobs. So Friedman says, in that case, why don't you use spoons? I mean, there's a bridge that they're building in Cambridge, what they've been building, it's literally 80 feet, 5 years. Don't tell me it's not fraud. Don't tell me it wasn't a gift. I don't want to hear it. Okay? I don't want to hear it. It's just, if that happened anywhere else, we'd all be fired, just like that. We wouldn't survive in our jobs. And so, it's not to create jobs, but it will create jobs. It'll be conducive to long-term growth. We will borrow cheap. All those things are true, but it's got to be done. Immigration, there's a perfect bill passed by the Senate, Schumer, McCain, pathway to citizenship for the undocumented but lawfully abiding people living here, who do a lot of work for you all that we should treat with respect. Citizenship is the end of the line. They got to get behind everybody else, pay their taxes, catch up in 15 years. Okay, come on, it's not going to kill us to do that. It just isn't. Proper border control, and keep people who are educated or city school educations. Tax reform we mentioned. We need to acknowledge that there's going to be a fiscal cliff in 10 years. So right now you don't have it. In 10 years, the United States deficit is going to double between 2030 and 2050. It will be an unmitigated disaster. We can fix it today, but we're stupid. And we lie to ourselves, by the way. We don't keep proper accounting. So when the government does something that creates a huge liability, they don't even count it. This doesn't count, And so education, we've already spoken a little bit about education, inner city school education. And if you did those things, by the way, I think the country would be booming. I don't buy this secular stagnation. I don't buy the stuff that technology is going to make it worse forever. I don't buy any of that. We have created, what have we done instead? Huge regulatory stuff. Government, we had 2 government shutdowns. We almost had a default on U.S. government debt, which could have put us into a depression, folks. That's how stupid that was. And I don't know if it's true, by the way. So I was in Washington saying, well, that's true. I said, yes, I don't know it's true, but I think it's a pretty good chance. Why would you take the chance? I mean, why would you even think like that, to take that kind of chance? And so it's us. It's us. Take out the gun and shoot yourself in the foot and do it again. And if whoever becomes president, if they do the right stuff, will be booming. If they don't, we're going to have a terrible 4 years, not terrible, maybe still grow a little bit, and then we'll have another nasty election. And then one day someone's going to come along, recognize the virtues of the country, get people to work together, and we'll be back to being the America we used to be.
In our world, the insurance world.
My title, if I run for president, is going to be Make America Fun Again.
In our world, and a lot of it too, regulatory reform appears to be a hope, a dream, but not a reality. What do you think?
A hope and a dream. It's like, I don't want to just talk about financial. It's just bad. And and I'm talking about us. I travel around. I talk to middle market companies, small business companies. It is a unmitigated disgrace. I mean, if you want to become a barber in New York City, it takes a year and 3 licenses. What the hell's wrong with us? So small business formation, for the first time in our history, has been 0 net. 0 for the last, I forget the exact number, something like 0 for the last 5 years. Because it's hard to do. It's just hard to do. I mean, why do we do that? And everyone should look at their own, because these things get built up over time, and they weren't necessarily they weren't all for bad intent, but they are to protect the existing barbers, and they are sinecure for the people we got to get licenses from. I mean, it does build up this whole habitat that gets paid for this stupidity. And so someone's got to come knock it down. They got to knock down the city, the state, and the federal government. And yet a lot of our politicians, I'm talking about more Washington, because my experience with governors and mayors, they get it. The second they get involved, they get it. They see it. They want to do something about it because it helps the local community. But Washington completely denies it. Totally denies it. George McGovern. Anyone remember George McGovern? The great liberal. He was a wonderful man. Probably the most liberal guy who ever ran for Senate. Lost by a complete landslide. Went to Maine or New Hampshire, bought an inn with like 15 rooms. became a small businessman. And he wrote 10 years later an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal called "A Politician's Dream is a Businessman's Nightmare." And he went through how hard it was to meet all the rules, requirements, OSHA, workers' comp, insurance. You know, you can't hire kids, you can't do this, you can't fix your lawn, you can't do this. And he said, I can't sell a room or sell a burger and have a profit if I do all that. And he said each one of those things was passed with good intent, but the cumulative effect is devastating, and maybe legislators should spend time in the real world before they pass legislation. He also said, this is amazingly for a Democrat, he said, oh, also, not everyone who broke their ankle in front of my hotel was my fault. Because he was talking about all the lawsuits, and I mean, what is wrong with us? I mean, seriously. And yet, no one goes to Washington and says that. No one. They'll just be denied the second you bring it up. Because I don't know what they're busy doing down there sometimes, but.
You speak of Washington. Right now, we have tremendous polarization. Is it going to get worse? What do you think?
I don't know, because I think if Hillary wins, she has a chance. Either one has a chance to bridge the divide. If the first thing they realize when they become president is that they're president of all the people. Yeah, so this is another great argument you're hearing from people that I just don't believe. So technology is the thing that's changed everything all the time. Okay, the first technologies were agriculture. Fire, I guess fire might have been the first one. And agriculture allowed talent, because until that we were hunter-gatherers. And then, of course, you have steam engines and electricity and homes and plumbing, and then you got all these other things, and cars and airplanes. When my grandfather was born, there were no cars, no airplanes, no phones. There was no health care. Okay, those are all technologies since 1897. And so it's been unbelievable. Look, it's unbelievable how long you live, the air is cleaner, the things we can do, you can travel the world. There are flaws. Technology causes problems and some disruption, stuff like that, but it has been a huge force for good. It causes business interruption. That job may change. That's been going on the whole time. The fact that this is new and now it's going to wipe out all these other jobs, it's going to be a disaster and half the country's going to be unemployed, it's not true. What happens is things change. There used to be 11 million people involved in agriculture. Now I think it's 1. Do you still want 11 million involved in agriculture? You think you'd be better off? Those 11 million are now doing something different. They're engineers, they're on the web, they're building equipment and chemicals and all those things. So I think it's faster. I think you have to use technology to serve your clients better, faster, quicker. We have 30 million people who bank on the mobile phone. So they talk about fintech. We are the largest bank on the phone. We move more money in the phone. Millennials, they always say millennials don't like banks. Once they get their first paycheck, they love direct deposit. They love alerts. They love splitting bills. They love being able to pay on their mobile phone. 57% of new accounts are millennials, and they like us. So use technology to serve your client all the time. And if it goes too fast in a way that society can't adjust that quickly, then government there can help. Then you have things like trade is a wonderful thing, as a lot of you in Ohio know. It's a wonderful thing for society, for mankind, and for America. But it causes disruption. There might be that town, that plant that closes for it. Then government, paid for by us, but government will have relocation, retraining, income stabilization, all those things that make it fair. Okay, you got hurt by this, it's good for the country, but you got hurt, we're gonna give you a leg up and a hand up while you move or retrain or redevelop something, and that kind of stuff works if it's done properly. So.
Another thing is we're going along now, we're worried about unemployment in Cincinnati. We're just like every other city probably, but we're working very hard on the poverty initiatives, which Dave and Leanne have been deep into for 20 years. What advice would you have us for trying to solve these incredible problems?
So one of the things, we're doing this work skills initiative around the world, and we're learning lessons from Germany. Probably is one of the best for vocational, what we would call maybe community schools to get into jobs. And they're also very good at high school at getting into jobs. In other words, here we talk about, I'll make everything free. Make community school free, make this free. What you really want to say is, make it when they leave, they've got a certificate that you hire them, because they're properly trained, and you were part of the training, in fact. And it's got to be done locally. So it can't be done federal. The mayor here's got to do it. You know, what does P&G need? What does GE need? What do you need? Who needs coding? Who needs accountants? Who needs phlebotics? Who needs, then get the vocational schools, the community schools, and the high schools to do those things. These kids get out, they get a job. And then, you know, if you look at, you know, the tax rate's got to be done by state and all these various things, but you can attract, you could be very competitive. Cincinnati's got to do that both with the state and with Cincinnati and be very competitive, and you'll pull in jobs here. And jobs are not a zero-sum game. I'm going to give you one example, because I often speak to, again, some of my Democratic friends. They act like, you know, it almost doesn't matter because if you get the job, someone else lost it. There's a certain amount of jobs, a certain amount of growth. And take East Germany and West Germany in 1945. Okay? They were maybe equivalent size, equivalent education, equivalent. East Germany could have done just as well as West Germany. And West Germany didn't have the American system, but it had kind of a free market, like Democratic system and stuff like that. You know, they boomed. And, you know, and 40 years later, East Germany's income was 20% per person. It didn't have to be that way. And that's called development, you know, proper policies. And they didn't do it. One was, you know, we call it socialist or Soviet or whatever you want to call it, but it didn't work. Just like it didn't work in Venezuela, Ecuador, North Korea, and I can go around the world, Cuba. It doesn't work. And what did work? South Korea, West Germany, Mexico now. I mean, Singapore. They're great examples. You know, in Singapore, the guy who ran Singapore, this is American. I remember people saying he's a dictator. You remember the stories where he would cane people if they spat gum on the street, there was a little bit of truth to it, but not completely true. But he was elected. He's strong. He's elected for 20 years. They had Chinese, Indian, Malay. Okay? He was afraid of civil war. They had no income. What did he do? And they have a higher GDP per person than America today. I'm still maybe a Democrat at this point, but I tell my Democratic friends, had you been running Singapore, it would still be a backwater. Because he did things that, you know, so anyway, he said, I'm going to educate the people. In public housing, they've got good public housing, he did not allow people to, you know, that the Indians live in this building, the Malay in that building, the Chinese in that building. He didn't even allow it by floor. They were integrated by apartment, so people can meet each other's kids and smell each other's foods and respect each other a little bit. Okay, he made, and think of this one, he made them learn English. His business strategy was, if we learn English, we could be a trading hub and a center for Asian commerce. We now have 3,000 people there in trading, private banking, technology, and it worked. And now they're leading in biotechnology, they're leading in healthcare, they're leading in, they make all their own water, like from the sea, you know. And so if you do it right, it works. And yet, you know, a lot of those policies, you know, and again, it was all elected, but, you know, it was tough. He was a tough guy, but he wanted to save his people, and boy, did he.
We have time for one more question. I want to ask a little bit different. We've all talked an awful lot about the future of the world and how Asia is such a big piece of it. What's your sense of south of the border, of Latin America, South America area, and the opportunity for our investment?
Yeah, so Mexico has done fabulous, okay? The Mexico GDP, debt to GDP is 40%. This president, I know he's done a lot of things about issues and a 25% approval rate, but he's put in place oil reform, electricity reform, union reform, which is going to be great for the country. Unemployment is low. They're very competitive. This oil reform, and if you think about policy, their cost of energy in Mexico is 3 times the cost of energy in the United States. And that cost goes all the way down to Guatemala, Nicaragua, Colombia. If they change that, they're going to be very competitive. It's going to reduce immigration. It's going to help them give jobs. They're going to have American companies invest, but they're allowing now American companies to invest in Mexican properties. And Colombia is turning the corner. Venezuela is a basket case. Argentina just put in place a wonderful guy who's doing all the right things, just like I mentioned Singapore. He's just going to do the right things. And it's an so Latin America, there's no war in Latin America, and they're embedded with huge natural resources too. So Brazil, which has been going down 4% the last couple of years, will probably grow this year. The fact that they impeached their president is a good sign, because it shows that the judiciary is in charge. There's a rule of law. Okay, so if you look at governments, reform is really important. Are they on the path of reform all the time? And so it's really country by country, but we're actually quite optimistic about Latin America.
Jamie, on behalf of all of us in this room, thanks so much for giving Cincinnati a day of your time.
Thank you very much. Good luck to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. You like that?
Gentlemen, thank you. Very good job. Jamie and John, John and Jamie. Again, another round of applause from them.